Breaking news are happening now.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Reality Flash. My name is Mike Bloom, and I'm here to bring you the flashiest breaking news from the wide world of reality TV. So, from Auf Wiedersehen to Guten Tag, Heidi Klum is returning to Project Runway. She will be serving as the host and judge once again for the upcoming 21st season of the design series in 2025, exclusively revealed by People.com earlier today. Heidi Klum has been away from the Emmy-winning design series for almost a decade at this point. She had served as a host and judge for the first 16 seasons of the series. And in fact, she started alongside Project Runway all the way back in December 2004. Actually, we just celebrated the 20th anniversary of Project Runway just about a month ago. And when Klum had gotten into, that very new environment of this series, she was not only the host and one of the central figures of the show, one would consider one of the faces of the series, but also was one of the judges alongside Michael Kors and Nina Garcia. She was able to use her experience in the fashion industry as a model to help adjudicate these fashion designers who were looking for their next big break in the industry. Project Runway has really had this kind of massive footprint in reality TV going on 2 decades. It has, of course, inspired a lot of other competition reality shows. RuPaul's Drag Race, with its design elements, obviously has a big inspiration from there. Fellow Bravo show Top Chef, of course, was able to adapt this type of format to the culinary arts. Even just within the franchise of Project Runway, there have been over 30 international adaptations. There's been even just domestically a handful of spin-offs, and a lot of all this success, at least partially, lies at the very decadent heels of Heidi Klum, who was able to bring her MC skills and helpful critiques to make her really a constant of this series, even when they were thrown in a whole heap of variables, including a lot of different networks along the way. For all of the work that she had done during the first 16 seasons of the show, she was actually nominated alongside a longtime mentor of the series and good friend, Tim Gunn, for the Outstanding Host for a Reality or Reality Competition program. She was nominated, I want to say, like 9 times, 6 times definitely, for Project Runway. I remember because Jeff Probst had, that streak to begin with the award. Then Tom Bergeron, temporarily kind of took it from him, and then they were able to take it from him as well. But all that changed in 2018. So at that time, Project Runway had moved from Bravo over to Lifetime, and it was actually looking to go back to Bravo right now. It kind of like had subletted Lifetime and was looking for more of its permanent home back from whence it came. But at the same time, Klum and Gunn, they were having a little bit of the wanderlust a bit. They were looking for ways that they could reinvent the series. This was a very consistent structure for a show going on 14 years. And so it seems like they had some interesting imaginative suggestions as to things they could bring to the show to maybe put it in a new era, taking this opportunity to return back home, in a manner of speaking. As Klum put it in an interview in The Hollywood Reporter in 2020, she said, quote, "Our imagination was bigger than what we were allowed to do." From what it sounds like, they kind of were given this choice. They could either go with the same old, the familiar, and decide to stick with Project Runway as it continues to kind of run the same format that it's used to, or they could turn left instead of right as they reach the end of the runway. They could strike out on their own and try a new project. And so they did do the latter, but admittedly, if you kind of take a look behind the microscope as to what they ended up working on, wasn't exactly a huge leap in creativity. I am, of course, speaking about Making the Cut, which aired from 2020 to 2022 over on Amazon Prime. This had Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn serving as co-creators, executive producers, and, of course, co-hosts. So Some of you have heard this before. Let me briefly describe what Making the Cut is about. So, this show features a group of designers competing in a series of challenges, getting eliminated along the way due to the performance in said challenges, in the hopes of winning a big cash prize at the end of it all. Probably the biggest difference that existed between Klum and Gunn's current show and their previous show is the fact that since the series was on Amazon, apparently you could actually shop for the outfits, the garments that were made on the show proper. It truly brought to life this whole steal this look meme with an extra dose of capitalism just for taste. So while Making the Cut ended a couple years ago, again 2022, Heidi Klum has kept herself busy, suffice it to say. Has, of course, for those who are fans of America's Got Talent, been a staple of that show as a judge for 11 seasons, including the past 5 years, basically since 2020. And of course, outside of reality TV, she is continuing to push the limits of whether someone can be a little too into Halloween with her costumes every year that frankly break the internet and my psyche simultaneously. All that is to say that, like a worm, Heidi Klum is wiggling and burrowing herself back into the familial dirt of Project Runway. The question is, how much has that dirt changed? And why is Project Runway going through as many identities as Heidi Klum on October 31st? I'll be back in a flash to tell you more about it. So, Heidi Klum coming back to Project Runway is frankly a dose of the familiar that is needed for the show. So, back when the series returned for season 17 without Heidi Klum or Tim Gunn or Judge Zach Posen, it looked radically different, despite the fact that, ironically enough, it was back on the network that started it all. So, taking Heidi Klum's spot as host and judge for season 17 was Carly Kloss, a fellow supermodel. I think some people regard her as like relatively replacement level, though if you ask one designer who ended up going viral, she probably spent her 2 seasons daydreaming about what to wear to dinner with the Kushners. Please comment if you actually understand that reference. I'm trying to find how many people actually do. But Carly Kloss, suffice it to say, ends up stepping away from her job as host in 2021. And in her place, the series chose a bit more of an internal hire in more ways than one. Previous winner Christian Siriano, who had actually been replacing Tim Gunn as the designer's mentor following his departure, he got promoted to do some double duty as he filled the role of host as well. And if you don't know Christian Siriano, interestingly, he's kind of like the Carrie Underwood of Project Runway. He won the show's 4th season. He's regarded as one of the most successful alums to ever come out of the show. And much like we're about to see in a couple months with Carrie Underwood on American Idol, he had this big homecoming to the series that kind of jump-started his career, but this time on the other side of the table. This was a role that he has filled through the most recently completed season, which we had at the end of 2023, which was this big all-star celebration of the past 20 seasons, which should not be confused for the All-Stars spinoff, which aired for a good handful of seasons as well on a completely different network. But after 2 decades on the air, Project Runway has decided once more to change its outfit. In October this past year, it was announced that the upcoming season 21 would make yet another channel move, not Chanel move, this time over to Freeform. Disney is in, Universal is out. So season 21 is apparently only going to consist of 10 episodes as opposed to the 14 that fans have been used to from the past few seasons, showing maybe a little bit more of a smaller cast and budget. And producers have teased that the change in location and episode order signifies something larger. They call it an evolution in the series, quote, for a new generation. This concept is so intriguing to me because obviously, at its conceit, fashion is supposed to serve as kind of like a statement of the times. So, what does this mean for a new generation? Does this mean that we're going to get some of our youngest set of designers ever? Will the challenge include making outfits for Chapel Roan and the Rizzler? At this point, we don't have any announcement about any additional judges besides Heidi Klum or a mentor fill in or even a premiere date as to when season 21 is coming. So I just find it really interesting amidst what I imagine would be a lot of unfamiliar coming our way that they choose to anchor it in this one familiar face in Heidi Klum, kind of able to say, yeah, this is a brand new Project Runway, but this is still Project Runway at the end of the day. And despite the fact that she has been away for a few years, I think a lot of people still equate the show to Heidi Klum herself. Now, that being said, there's a lot of unknown with all of this recent news. Does this mean that Heidi Klum won't be a part of America's Got Talent anymore, including the upcoming 20th season, given the fact that these are essentially two shows that are now under two different companies? What does a Disney-fied Project Runway even look like? And will this, new phase of the show bring the creativity that Heidi Klum was actually seeking out that prompted her leaving the show in the first place? For me, as long as the new era of Project Runway doesn't involve taking away someone's sewing needles when they lose a challenge, I personally am intrigued to see what the latest version of one of the longest running creative series out there is able to bring, especially with the very welcome return of Heidi Klum. And of course, if you see something, say something. If you spot any reality TV news out there that you want me to cover, no spam, no solicitations, just tips at therealityflash.com. Again, that's just tips at therealityflash.com, because sometimes the only thing that gets me up in the morning is a good tip. And make sure you subscribe as well at therealityflash.com to make sure you don't miss a second of any breaking news in the world of reality TV. Subscribe in audio form, video form here on YouTube. And also, let me know your thoughts. What's your excitement level hearing that Heidi Klum is coming back to Project Runway? Were you a Project Runway fan? What other news out there in reality TV are you excited for me to talk about? Let your voice be heard. And of course, as a brand new podcast, if you could leave any ratings and reviews on your podcatcher of choice, that would be so greatly appreciated. I have received such a great outpouring of support with this concept with the first episode that aired a couple of days ago. I am thrilled to have a news item jumping into your feeds only a couple of days after that. And if that is any indication, there is plenty on the horizon for shows both old and new, and maybe looking old, but with a new coat of paint like Project Runway. All that is to say, 2025 should be a lot of fun, and I am thrilled to bring you any and all breaking news coming my way here on The Reality Flash. That's going to do it for this episode of The Reality Flash. I'll return in your eyes and ears soon with more reality TV news you need to know as it breaks. Until then, I hope you like what you saw.